Hi there, my name is Nana Kapoor, and I'm a performance coach to high achieving entrepreneurs and young leaders. In this series, I'll be speaking to entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs on the one book that has impacted them or shaped their perspective towards their goals. These are people who read, introspect about what they learn, and thus I call them intrapreneurs. I hope their stories and learnings from the best books inspire you to become an entrepreneur too. Stay tuned for today's episode, and I look forward to hearing your feedback. Hey guys, my guest today is Adam Haluska. Originally from Hungary, he's been actively involved in the startup scene across Europe and Asia in the past 5 years. From a young age, he enjoyed building things, photography, videography, developing cool concepts, prototypes, and decks. With a bachelor in business studies and a master's in entrepreneurial engineering, he's been part of various companies, whether as a founder or as an integral part of their team in the role of business modeling, lean development, design thinking, product management, marketing, and content creation. Today, he's the head of marketing and the product manager at a pre-Series A startup, Greenhouse.co, a technology platform helping startups and entrepreneurs find reliable corporate service providers in APAC. He's seen the company through since the beginning and has been part of a few fundraising rounds as well. His role revolves around building and executing marketing strategies, product management, product marketing, user and customer acquisition. When I used to work with Adam, he had this motto that he can learn any skill quickly. All you got to do is show it to him and he will embody it with a blink of an eye. So I've tested this out and it is true. Adam's an ex-coworker and a great friend of mine. We start off today's episode with understanding Adam's choice of books. So we'd love to know what kinds of books he reads, after which I'm going to summarize the book that impacted him. And during the bulk of our podcast, I'll be providing some snippets of the book between asking Adam some questions on his experience and thoughts about developing habits. There will also be a bonus episode after this, so stay tuned to hear more about that. Intrapreneurs, I hope you enjoy this episode. Hey, Adam, how are you?
Oh God, I'm super excited about this. You and I have been talking about this podcast in the past couple of weeks, so I'm very much looking forward to it.
Me too, me too. Cool. So let's start off this podcast by telling our viewers what kind of books do you actually like to learn? Because you've got a really wide array of interests. You know, when I was reading your description, you're into a lot of things. So what kind of books do you actually like to read?
Well, it's very difficult to put them in like one specific category. I must admit that when I was younger, I was not a good reader. In fact, I tried to find every possible excuse to read a book, but then luckily this has changed for the past couple of years. So I would say that now most of the books that I read, about philosophy, like self-development. I love biographies. Recently, I just read the biography 50 Cent, whose name is
Oh,
Curtis
nice.
Jackson. I'm not sure if you have known that. David Goggins. I'm not sure if you're familiar with these names. And of course, I also spend a bit of time on reading about like business and some work-related books that can, help my professional development as well. So I can say that, there are a lot of different kind of categories, mainly based on the recommendations I received. So usually I juggle a couple of books at the same time.
Nice. But that's like me. Growing up, I never used to enjoy reading. And I think it's only in the recent years that I picked up on it, especially after I started working and I realized how I needed to upskill myself and just learn more. But as a young person, never used to enjoy it. But how do you typically read your books? Are you more of an audiobook person or would you like to actually buy the book? What's your favorite form of reading?
I'm very much into audiobooks lately.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just makes things so much easier. I started listening to audiobooks when I moved to Jakarta because I think you're familiar with the traffic situation there. So I ended up spending like 45 minutes, 1 hour in the traffic and like, okay,
Yeah.
what can I do? If I just, carry a book with myself, I just feel way too dizzy. And yeah, so I started listening to audiobooks, but sometimes I also have physical books. For example, this one, I already read this like 2 times, but sometimes I just like going through it just to remind myself because I love
Nice.
taking notes. So to be honest, I use both forms.
Nice. So I purchased a Kindle because so many books were not available in Indonesia. So for me, the quickest way was to do Kindle, but I would love to one day get the hang of audiobooks because I feel like once you get the hang of that, you could be anywhere around the world listening to an audiobook, walking. I've yet to master the skill of listening to an audiobook, but I hope to get there one day. Cool. So moving on to the book that has impacted you. And you've mentioned Atomic Habits by James Clear. For those of you who have not read it, James talks about how 6 years after he was hit in the face with a baseball bat, flown to the hospital, he was put in coma, yet he was selected as the top male athlete in his university and awarded by ESPN. And this award is only given to 30 players across the country. So when he started working, he began publishing articles about the habits he built over the years. And not long after, coaches at the NFL, NBA, MLB were reaching out to him. He began this Habits Academy, which became the premier training platform for organizations and individuals interested in building better habits. The book uses biology, neurology, philosophy, psychology to create a step-by-step actionable way to build better habits, not for days or for weeks, but for an actual lifetime. It's called Atomic Habits because it talks about how a tiny change, a marginal gain, are the building blocks of remarkable results. So I think the way it was written was extremely applicable to goals in every aspect in our life. One of my favorite lines was, we all deal with setbacks, but in the long run, the quality of our lives often depends on the quality of our habits. With the same habits, you'll end up with the same results, but with better habits, anything is possible. Is that true, Adam? With better habits, anything is possible.
Yeah, I think he really nailed that one. First of all, I was fascinated by his story, and I really loved the way he like structured the entire book because it was more like, you know, a guideline. So it was not something that I separately had to sit down. I'm like, okay, like what does he actually mean? It was very nice written and easily implementable on my life. And yeah, just to answer your question, habits are everything, especially because like they are subconsciously performed. So either ways, small habits already shape our lives. And most of the time we are not even aware of them. So if we are able to bring those habits under our control, then I do believe that anything is possible. You can literally change your entire identity and who you are as a person. And me personally, who is able to pick up habits very easily, unfortunately, mainly bad ones, because, you know, there is this immediate reward. For example, when you eat like a piece of chocolate, you have that like sugar rush, or when you just have like other kind of bad habits, usually the reward is immediate. I really need to be aware of it. So that's something that I do spend time on to self-reflect time after time, just to be aware of my good habits, my bad habits, and what are the things that I would like to change, just by having a vision for myself that how I would like to be perceived as an individual. I think it's all about the habits that I perform in my life. So I think that's very much spot on.
Yeah. I like how you said it's so unconscious. Our habits become so unconscious, but once you lift it to the conscious level and you're aware of it, that's when you could really do magic.
Exactly.
That's when, because you don't realize so many of these things. Like I've picked up some really horrible, stupid habits that have become so ingrained in me, right? But once you get that awareness, anything is possible. So we're definitely going to be talking about your habit. Let's start with that then. One of the things he mentions was that changes that seem small and unimportant at first, will compound to remarkable results if you're willing to stick with them for years, right? So you always start small. And he thinks, habits are compounded. So that means that they add up very slowly. Just because you go to the gym 3 days doesn't mean you're going to lose weight. Similarly, the slow pace of transformation makes it very easy for a bad habit. So if you eat unhealthy today, the scale is not going to move so much, the weighing scale, right? But making a choice that's 1% better for you or 1% worse could seem insignificant in the moment, but in a span of moments that make up a lifetime, it makes a difference between who you are right now and who you could be in the future. So a slight change in a habit, either 1% worse or 1% better, can lead you to a very different direction, right? So he does this math that if you're 1% worse every day for 1 year, that's 0.99 to the power of 365 equals to 0.03. So you decline to zero. But if you're 1% better every day for 1 year, that's 1.01 to the power of 365. You're 37 times better when you're done, right? So what have you committed to? What is that habit that you have committed to becoming 1% better each day?
So I think when it comes to good habits, they have a problem, first of all. Yeah, because for good habits, the immediate consequence is that there's a cost happens in the moment. Yeah, that you are going to suffer in the gym. You will have to say no to things. So
True.
usually the reward is delayed, and this is something that I think we all need to be aware of. Bad habits are exactly the opposite. You feel great in the moment, but then after that you just feel guilty about it. And like if you eat super unhealthy all the time, then eventually you are going to start seeing that those extra kilos start to appear on your body. So actually, like the main habit that I like to point out here as an example from my life, it was always about health. I think Gandhi also said it, that health is real wealth. Yeah. And if you look into it, like how do you define health? It's physical, mental, and the social well-being of a person. Of course, we can talk about like emotional, spiritual, and all these kind of things, but I do think that those kind of parts are going to naturally manifest themselves if you take care of this, especially the first two things, physical and mental. So first, you need to have peace of the body before you can have a peace of mind. So what I mean by that is that, for example, like if you are unhealthy and you have some struggles in life, like you have a broken leg or you have some health conditions, it's going to be very difficult to achieve that peace of mind. I'm not saying it's impossible, but of course, there are going to be some challenges. So that's what I started with. So just to give the example that I remember that back in like 2013, 14, after being in a relationship with a person who had a very different kind of genes and biology just in general, I started to pick up some of the habits. Yeah. And then in 1 year, I gained 23 kilos. Then I realized that like, oh my God, like this has to stop now. I still remember that moment. It was around like somewhere between Christmas and New Year's that I went home, I looked in the mirror. That was the time when like things were going great in terms of career and all these things, but I didn't really invest in myself. And I was just looking at myself in the mirror. I will never forget that moment. And sorry for my language, but I think I just had to be super honest with myself that I'm looking at myself and I'm like, oh my God, you look like a 40-year-old dad. You are a bald, fat fuck. And I'm like, just by being honest, I set it clear that, that's my current status. So I didn't want to put myself in an illusion that you are still lovable, you are still a nice person. But deep inside, I felt that, I'm not happy with myself. So that literally changed my mind. And then after that, I started investing more into my own health, mainly on the physical side. So I know that just changing everything at once is not going to be possible because that's just completely strange to you. That's not you. You will try to fulfill someone's identity that's alien to you. So I tried a couple of times before, but the change was too big. And every single piece of bone in my body just resisted. And, was continuously having these thoughts that like, you don't have to do this. This is not you. But the thing is that you need to suffer for the results that you would like to accomplish. So I did a couple of like small hacks here and there and continuously reflected on them. So for example, like I always made only one commitment every single week or bi-weekly. So the first thing was that I'm going to start my day with a big glass of water. So you sleep for 8 hours, you are completely dehydrated. And if you start with a coffee, first of all, it's not going to be good for your stomach. And then, like your brain just doesn't function as well as it would with water. So that was the first change. The second change that, okay, I'm not going to start taking like a car. Yeah. Wherever I can, I'm going to take the bicycle or I'm just going to start walking. Yeah. So I just made a habit out of that. And then after that, I made this challenge for myself that no matter where I have to go, I never take the elevator, which was kind of like difficult in certain situations, especially when I had a class on the 19th floor. But I'm like, I promised to myself, I'm going to do it. And slowly but surely, I was able to build up this kind of habits. And over time, they compounded. So meaning that I started to feel so much better. I started to feel my physique is getting better. I'm not getting exhausted so fast. And then after that, slowly, I started to transition towards actual physical exercises. So the first commitment I made was just like, okay, go to the gym once. Just find a day, just do it once. I did it once, did it twice, did it 3 times. So I scaled it to a level that I found that, okay, that's what I'm going to need in order to accomplish those goals that I set for myself. So I can keep telling you about this story because there were a lot of small things that I did. But the point is that I always self-reflected. Like, is this something that I can stick to, or I'm not going to be able to stick to that?
Yeah. There are two things that really spoke out to me. The first was the fact that you were rational enough to start small, right? Because once someone looks at the goal and it looks so scary and big, it demotivates you to go for it. But you did it step by step, little by little, 1%, 1%, 1%, you know? So that in itself is such a great start. So I really like how you said that. And I think in the book as well, James does mention one of the ways to do it is to make it easy, right? And the second thing you mentioned, which I don't think a lot of people do, and this is obviously an assumption I'm making, but is you were reflecting as you were going on, right? You were reflecting on it and seeing, is it working, is it not working? And then you change it up based on that. And I think that's for me, it's a very important part of the process is to keep reflecting as you go on.
I treat it as like a business experiment as well. So in business, we do a lot of like testing. It's like iterative learning. So if you're familiar with the concept of growth hacking, that's exactly what happens. That you run a series of small experiments, then you reflect and you analyze the data, how it works, whether it works, and what are the elements that you should change, what are the elements that you should stick to. So I was literally trying to growth hack my life. And that was the approach that I took in order to become a better version of myself.
That's awesome. I love it when we can apply business principles to real life because I think it's like I just really relate to those things. So that's really great. For those of you who know what's growth hacking, Adam used that method. So I'm keen to understand, right? Because when I read the book, I had this really big misconception that goals matter the most. Your end goal matters, your end goal matters. Because when I do a session with a client, the first thing we do in our first session is we understand the goals that they want to get to at the end, and it keeps you focused. But goals are the results you want to achieve. The system that you create is about the process to get there. And according to the book, that's way more important because if you don't have a system and you don't have a process, then you're not going to meet that goal, right?
Yeah.
Did you come up with a system or do you have a system now with getting healthy and with working on your health?
Well, so if I can quote something from the book and some of James Clear's speeches on stage, that there are like 4 different stages. Yeah. One of them is just like, noticing the habit that you would like to start doing or you want to stop doing, then wanting it, then doing it and liking it. I think there are a couple of things that I would add to this, but the first is just, like noticing. That's why self-reflection, self-awareness is extremely important. So that's where it starts, when you realize that there is something that needs to be changed. Then after that, as a second step, I usually try to answer the question that why do I want to do this? Yeah. And why do I want to stop doing this? So here I'm already setting goals. I'm a person who is driven by accomplishing goals. I'm extremely competitive. So if I don't have that kind of North Star, I just lose interest. Yeah. And then after that, you move into the execution phase. What I think we should talk about here is that I do spend time on planning, but I also know that I tend to overplan. And this is where a lot of people lose focus because they just, like, okay, I need to plan it. I need to think about it. And this is how they just try to find excuses like not doing it. But once you have a plan, what you need to consider there is that you need to find a sustainable way of executing it. So just by definition, whatever cannot be repeated forever, that's not sustainable. So again, if you go back to the previous example of getting into shape, yeah, that's why I don't believe in like strict diets that, for 2 weeks, that's what you do. Yeah, of course, there are different kind of methods, like for example, like fasting and so on, just to like detox and clean your body. Great. Yeah, but you're not going to do that forever. You're aware of that. And when you just start doing a specific diet, there are going to be so many restrictions that you are going to suffer. You are going to lose those couple of pounds, but then after that, you are more likely to get back to the exact same bad habits. So you need to find a sustainable way of doing that. And then after that, you just need to put in the repetition and you need to keep yourself accountable. What I would also add here is that it took some time for me to figure out that what is it that I'm lacking, because I was also like breaking habits very fast. And I realized that I exhausted myself, not just physically, but mentally.
Yeah.
So I tried to figure out a way that how I can find my fuel. Yeah. Not just in form of motivation, but but a few that can keep the engine running. So here we can talk about getting enough sleep, having a better work-life balance, or just doing stuff that, makes me happy. And I figured that once I'm able to take care of those things, I'm more likely to perform good habits. What I would also add here is that I think it was also mentioned in the book somewhere that you need to optimize for the starting line, because the finish line just seems so far away. It's just overwhelming. You cannot even wrap your head around it, that how you are going to be able to accomplish that. So that's one thing. And one of the most important element there is your environment. So we have a symbiotic relationship with our environment, and we tend to underestimate that how your environment is going to impact you and the habits that you have. So usually I try to architect my own environment, removing things that those kind of triggers that are more likely to make me perform bad habits, and try to replace them with something that's going to push me to perform good habits. So I think the list goes on, but I'm very structured. I need to have a plan in place. And then after that, it's just all about execution and reflection continuously in a loop.
Yeah. You mentioned environment, and I think they also mentioned a community that you're part of. Be part of the environment, be part of the community that encourages the habits that you want to create. And you're right now working remotely. Is this environment that you have architected, does it help you with the habits that you want to create for yourself?
Absolutely. I spent 3 years in Jakarta. I like being there, but I also realized that I started to become a different person who I am, or who I want to be. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was one of the reasons why I also try to find a deal with the company that I can work remotely, because I just felt that my life is going in a direction where I don't want it to go. So change of environment in this regard can definitely benefit you if you find a better place to live at. But also just if you talk about the people that you surround yourself with. I'm not sure if it's something said in English, but in Hungarian, we have this saying that show me your 3 best friends and I'm going to tell you who you are. So you are very much going to become one of the gang. It's a completely natural reaction. You want to blend in. You want to be like the people around you. So the people you surround yourself with, whether they are going to drag you down or they are going to lift you up. So I'm also very selective about the people who I spend my time with. So whoever is close to me and they know that they are a good friend of mine, they know that they already passed that filter, and you are also one of them. So
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
That is very true. Yeah. So in English, we say the company you keep affects your character, which is very similar, right? And 100% agree with that. Now, speaking of character, speaking of things like identity, in the book, so he mentions 3 circles. So there's an inner circle, which is identity. There's a middle circle, which is the process. And there's an outer circle, which is the outcomes. Outcomes are things like losing weight, winning an award, and most goals are associated with this, right? The outer circle. And the second layer is the process, developing a gym routine, developing a meditation practice, and a lot of habits are built on that. Then your innermost layer, which is identity, is changing your beliefs, your self-image, judgments about yourself. And the outcomes are what you get, the processes are what you do, and the identity is what you believe in. So he says that it's good when you're developing habits to think about identity-based habits, right? Because it's hard to change your habits if you don't change that inner circle of underlying beliefs that led to your past behavior. So if you have a new goal, but you've not fundamentally changed who you want to be or who you are, then there's no way you can reach that. So for myself, I was always the kind of person who would wake up just in time for work, would always be rushing to eat breakfast. And it was just something that I really, really wanted to change, right? Because I wanted to identify with someone who wakes up in the morning, like all the other successful people who work out in the morning, who get lots of things done before getting to work. And I feel like I slowly managed to build that because that was the identity I wanted to create for myself. And now I finally got to the point of that habit of waking up early. If I cannot wake up past 6:37, it's just so ingrained in me. I get so much done by the time I'm at work at 9 a.m. And for me, work is just my desk, but I need to be at my desk at 9 a.m. It's just something that I've so strictly created because of this identity that I wanted to create for myself, right? And I'm more motivated to maintain it because I have this identity ingrained in me. When you started building your habits and when you started working on a healthier lifestyle, did you think about that core identity that you wanted to have for yourself?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I think it came in a very, very natural way. At that time, I was not aware of this book. So like my strategy was very simple and it even sounds very silly. I tried to find individuals who I would like to be like. Normally, I don't like comparing myself to other people, but there are people who I obviously look up to and I respect what they have accomplished, whether in business or with their physique. So I remember that I downloaded this guy who had the body. I'm like, okay, like this is actually possible for me, because like just I try to analyze that, okay, like like how wide the shoulder is, like all these things. And like, okay, that my body is pretty similar to that, and if I invest that time and effort, I can actually accomplish that. So I downloaded that image, I put my own face there, and then I try to visualize that that's what I want to become. But essentially I wanted to become an athlete, and I made myself believe that I'm an athlete. Then after that point, I started to think that what would an athlete do in this situation? Would that athlete do this or would that athlete do that? And that's how I was able to give up very bad habits for years, which eventually, so unfortunately, some of them came back, and I'm still planning to work on those, but I'm not beating myself up for that. Another habit that I wanted to pick up was that I want to become a reader. So it's not just that, okay, I read a book and okay, I'm done for the day. I actually wanted to build that identity that I read. Yeah. And that's something that just became part of my routine. I read maybe just like 5 lines or a page, or I don't know, like 30 pages if I have the time for it. And all these ways, essentially the change came from within, and everything just manifested itself externally.
Yeah.
And I think that's what everybody should do whenever they want to accomplish something that they identify themselves with a different person could be a motivation.
Yeah, yeah. I really like that. So another example that he gave was an outcome based is saying, I want to double my salary. But if you do it identity based, you're saying, I want to be an employee who is committed and dedicated. And if you have that identity in your mind, just like how yours is, I want to be a reader, then you can work on it so much, but then you're so much more committed to doing it, right? So this is something that I never realized till I read the book, and I was like, this is so much more transformational, right? It really sticks with you if you consider yourself that identity. So yeah, decide the type of person you want to be, and then the second step he mentions was prove it to yourself with small wins. Prove it to yourself that you can do it. Slowly read 5 pages, 10 pages, 30 pages, and then you get better and better and better at it. So I thought that was very, very applicable. Yeah. Now, when it comes to building habits, this is probably why a lot of people fail, is because there is that disappointment, right? Habits don't make much of a difference till you cross this certain level of performance. In the early stages, there's something called a plateau of latent potential, as he calls it, or a value of disappointment, right? So you expect it to be super linear, but it's really not. It goes somewhat like that, right? And in any compounding process, the most powerful outcomes are delayed. And to make a meaningful difference, your habits need to persist long enough to overcome that value of disappointment, right? So there was one quote in the book that was mentioned that mastery requires patience. And some social reformer mentioned that when nothing seems to help, I go and look at a stone cutter hammering away at his rock 100 times. He's just hammering, 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 and there's no crack on the rock. But on the 101st time, it splits into two. And it's not the last blow that did that. It was all the work that he did before, right? So it's only much later that you realize the value of your previous efforts. So people always think it's an overnight success, but there was a whole lot of work that preceded that, right? And have you had that value of disappointment or multiple values of disappointment when you're working on a habit because it takes a while to work on them?
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think this is always a trial and error. Everybody makes mistakes, right? But the point is that you need to be aware of your excuses. Like, is this actually reasonable that you have those excuses? Why not to perform or keep performing the habit that you start performing? Or you are just lazy, for example. And as I mentioned, that I'm a person who can very easily pick up bad habits as well. But at the same time, what really makes a difference is that if you are able to stick to a routine, yeah, regardless of your circumstances, because your circumstances are going to change. Just to give you an example from like the year before last year, I had a pretty bad lower back injury. And that was the time when I, again, like I started to get on the journey to get physically well and healthy and, build a great physique. And then after a couple of months, I had this very bad lower back injury, which like completely just, kind of forced me into bed. I was not able to walk for like a week, and then I had to go to different kind of therapies and all these kind of things, and it was a struggle. And I could have easily told myself like, okay, like you are not well, so you don't have to do anything. But I know that how difficult it is to start a good habit. That what I kept was just one single thing. That even though I was not working out as I wanted to do, but at least I kept the routine. So my body was always ready to perform a set of actions. So even though I was not lifting weights, but I always woke up at the same time. And instead of weightlifting, I was just stretching. But that still became part of my habit. So by the time I got better and I was fit enough to start working out again, I didn't really have to do much. I just had to replace stretching with, again, weight training. So the point is just to don't break the chain, because once you break it, very difficult to stand up again. But the point here is just, even if you break it, everybody make mistakes. Don't beat yourself up. Just try to get back on track as soon as possible.
Yeah. I'm trying to mentally imagine this, right? I mean, you had a lower back injury and you still managed to get yourself to stick to a routine. And I don't think many people can do that because they're like, oh, I've injured myself. Let me give myself a 1 to 2 months break and then I'll get back to it. So I'll completely erase my routine. I'll completely erase what I was doing. And then it's harder to get back to it, right? How did you get yourself to at least maintain that routine? Because I don't think I'll be able to do it as well. There are external circumstances that affect you. And it's so hard to get yourself to do that. So were you just really focused on the identity that you wanted to create? Or what was it that just kept you going to even stick to a routine after an injury?
I was not even focusing on the identity, I think. I already became that person. So it was already strange to me not to perform those kind of activities. Yeah, and by that time, I started to notice just by doing it, it makes me happy. And I started to realize that it started to impact different parts of my life as well. So just, like waking up early in the morning, I'm a morning person, wake up at 5:30 in the morning. I always start my day with exercising. I need that kind of like, having those endorphins just rushing through my system, because I realized that once I do that, my day is just so much better. I feel more focused. Plus, at the same time, the immediate reward is that even before most of the people woke up, I already accomplished something. Yeah, I made my bed, I worked out, there you go, I'm ready for the day. So I start loving the process itself. And I just didn't want to let those excuses to change me.
Yeah, I like that, because then even when it comes to traveling out of the country or any other external circumstances that change, you're already in this routine and you've fallen in love with this process that no matter what, you still stick to it. So that's really, really cool. Nice. Staying on the similar topic on being motivated, right? In the book, he mentions that the maximum motivation comes when things are at manageable difficulty. So it's not too easy, not too hard. And there's a law called Yerkes-Dawson law, which is completely new to me. And it says that when you start a new habit, you keep the behavior as easy as possible, and then you slowly try and advance on it, right? So we spoke about that earlier. But then you hit a middle zone, which is the optimal level of arousal, as the point between boredom and anxiety, right? And this is called the Goldilocks zone. So you're in the zone, you're fully immersed in that activity, you're working on challenges with manageable difficulty, and this is like nirvana zone, right? This is the best zone where you're really just at it, you're on the go. And he says that you need to search for challenges and behaviors so that it stays novel, right? So you stay in that middle zone. Otherwise, you get bored. So that's one option, where you search for challenges, otherwise you get bored. Or there are also some people who are endlessly fascinated by doing the same thing over and over again, and they fall in love with boredom, like a lot of professionals, right? They stick to a schedule. And he says habits plus deliberate practice becomes mastery. So are you the kind of person who's comfortable with boredom and doing the same thing over and over again? Or do you search for challenges so that it stays novel and you can stay in that middle zone of the Goldilocks zone, as they call it? What works for you best?
Well, if I just reflect on myself, I try to separate the two things. First of all, I hate being bored, but yet at the
Yeah.
same time, I intentionally try to create space and time for the time when I need to be bored and I just need to be with myself. Outside of that time, I love progression. I love doing stuff. And when it comes to activities, if it's not interesting or challenging enough, or I don't really see the point, I get easily bored and I'm more likely to give up those kind of habits. So here, I think what's really important for me is to always make it as a game, make it fun, or just simply like consider it as a challenge. People who know me, they know I'm really competitive. And
Yes.
that's why like, I know that like a few weeks ago when we played, what was it, a Monopoly deal? I'm not
I was
horrible,
scared.
but no, come on. Like I'm not as I don't think I'm that bad. People still love playing with me, and I think that's what matters. But the point is that I love winning, and especially when I beat my own personal records. So what I do is that I keep track of all the boring stuff that I do. So just to give you an example, I was in search for an application where I can track my workout routines and I document everything. It just, takes a couple of seconds after every single set just to put the numbers. But the next time when I go to the gym, I see those numbers. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I just need to do one extra rep, or I need to increase the weight by just like half a kilogram. And the moment I do that, it immediately becomes like super satisfying. I just become extremely proud of myself. And that's just going to help me to keep pursuing whatever I set for myself. And that's how I deal with boredom.
Yeah, nice. I like how you've made it a bit visual as well, so you can actually see these numbers, and that helps the mind a bit more, right? When you can see these numbers. Nice. Yeah, I somehow am okay with that boredom. So one of the habits that I created, and this was because I have a very sedentary lifestyle where I'm sitting on the chair the whole day. So I've got my workout in the morning, but by the end of the day, I do feel like I do need to exercise a little bit. I do need to get out a bit, breathe some fresh air because I'm, in these four walls the whole time. So one of the activities that I have done every single day for the past, I would say, since March, since I got a dog, was walking him at 5 p.m. without fail. And it's the same thing over and over again every single day. For some reason, I'm fairly comfortable with that. I'm fairly comfortable with going the same route or taking a slight detour, but it's the same thing that I'm doing, right? And it's only because I have it in my mind that I need to get out and breathe fresh air and I need to let loose. And it just became a habit. It's not a goal that I'm working towards to be able to be the fastest walker, or it's not a goal that I'm working on. It's just a habit that became so regular and routine, and it's a really boring habit, but I'm somehow okay with that. And I find that really strange. Like I was just reflecting on that the other day and I was like, this is an interesting thing about me, that I didn't know that I was comfortable with certain very boring habits. But I love what you said, that, and another thing that he says in the book is you need to reflect and review and, keep fine tuning these habits that you're working on. I like how you make it a challenge because you yourself are so competitive, right? At the end of the day, it's just you and yourself working on these habits, working on these processes, working on these goals. There's no one else who cares about it as much as you. So if you make it a challenge for yourself, that only benefits you. That's a character that you're tapping on. You're tapping on the fact that you are competitive, you're working on that, you're making it more exciting. I really, really like that.
I totally agree with that. And just to build
Yeah.
on your example, I think, for example, it very depends what is it that you perceive boring. So like you take a trophy to walk him, yeah, at 5 o'clock sharp, but it's not always the same. Yeah, maybe the route is the same, but your thoughts are different. The
True.
quality, the time with your dog is different. So it just like you made it more enjoyable. So instead of just forcing yourself that, okay, I need to walk from here to there, you actually like stacked it up on a way that you are doing some fun stuff, but at the same time you are also sticking to good habits, which is going to benefit you on the long run. If I can bring an example here, that what really helped me in my journey was finding ways how I can perform good habits by making it more enjoyable. So
Yeah.
in your example, you enjoy spending time with your dog. Yeah. In my example, I love food. I love delicious food, and I
Yeah.
can be also very critical when it comes to food. So I didn't want to give up everything that's good, but at the same time, I also know that the same way I was eating before, it's not going to be sustainable. So, for example, like intermittent fasting changed my life. I've been doing
Mhm.
that in the past 6 years. So I just skip breakfast. I've never been a breakfast person. It just makes me slow and tired in the morning after I eat breakfast. And usually my early hours are the most productive ones. So I skip that. And then
Yeah.
pretty much like I pushed all of my daily calorie intake for the second half of the day, and I can eat whatever I want. And then slowly by changing those like small things, replacing bad foods with good foods, that's going to be a ripple effect. So like all of this is going to just stack up.
Yeah. This whole concept of habit stacking was something that I realized from the book. I never knew about it before as well. So, just to give you listeners a bit of an insight of what's coming next, in this next bonus episode that I'll be releasing, I'm going to be talking about how James makes the ability to create habits a lot more easy, right? So he says, make it obvious, make it attractive, make them easy, make them satisfying. And if you want to remove bad habits, you make them invisible, make them unattractive, make them difficult, and make them unsatisfying. And the whole concept of habit stacking comes there as well. So I'll be talking to you guys, doing a quick summary about this on how you can easily implement these things such that you build or remove habits from your routine.
I'm sorry, I don't know how much time do we have left, but I really would like to bring this example.
Of
It was
course.
actually Christopher Forrest who told me about this a long, long time ago. And I found it very, very smart. So he only changed two things. One of them was he needs to cook his own food. Yeah.
Yeah.
And number two is that he doesn't order a Grab or Gojek. He takes the public transportation. So what it forced him to do is to get back home after work and cook and eat. So he just naturally decreased the number of times when he goes out to eat or drink or party. Yeah. And then by not taking a car, he walked to the subway, he took the subway, and just by that, he started getting more exercise. And I think we all can agree that the change was very, very visible. He definitely accomplished some great results, like you can see it on his appearance as well.
Yeah.
Just two small hacks.
Yeah. So I would recommend listeners listening, think about that. Think about that really carefully. What is that one to two things you can do that will have a ripple effect on a whole bunch of things that will just stack up and, create a routine in your life. And once you get the hang of it, it's not that difficult. Adam, what are your final thoughts from the book? What is the one thing or two things, or what is the last thing you want to tell our viewers about habits, atomic habits?
Well, I think people can change. If you really want to change, you just change. Yeah. But most of us don't really want to change, or
Yeah.
we are just simply not ready for it. And if that's the case, you just need to be honest with yourself. But it doesn't mean that you need to give up the entire idea of changing or becoming better. Just set more realistic expectations for yourself. And just little by little, you are going to get where you would like to be. And as the book also talks about it, it's going to compound over time. So
Yeah.
just start doing it. Don't procrastinate, because you are not going to change. You're just going to be exactly where you are right now. And if you are keep listening to this podcast, there must be something that kept you here.
Yeah. That's so true.
So just
I'm
think about that.
I'm going to build on that with something that James said from the book. He said, it doesn't matter if you're successful now or not. What matters is if your habits you're putting leads you to the path to success. So you should be concerned with your trajectory rather than your current results. If you're a millionaire, but you spend half your earnings every month, then you're on a bad trajectory. But if you're broke and you save a little bit every single month, then you're on the path to financial freedom. Even though you're moving a bit slower than you like, it's going to compound, right? That 1% every day or 1% every month is going to make a difference. So that really, really hit me because a lot of people kind of think about where they are now and lose hope, but they don't realize that just a little change every day could lead you to a very different direction, right?
So it really reminds me to something. I'm not sure who said it. I think it was Bill Gates. That people tend to overestimate what is it that they are able to accomplish in a short period of time, but they tend to underestimate what is it that they're able to accomplish in a long period of time. So that's why it's important that you set long-term goals, and those like small incremental changes are going to get you there. But the goal setting could be a completely different podcast. But yeah, just wanted to
Absolutely.
share that.
You're so right, though. There's a whole section on goal setting and the processes and, and everything that really fascinated me. So I'm going to try and put a little bit of that in the bonus podcast that's after this. But that really wraps up the book. So before we leave, I really want to ask you last two questions. One is, what is another book that you would recommend to our listeners?
I was thinking about it a lot because I was listening to a previous podcast as well. So I expected that. I don't know. It's very difficult to choose. If I need to choose a book, probably I would recommend Why We Sleep from Matthew Walker, because that was transformational for me. I always kept myself like so busy that I need to do stuff that I didn't invest so much time into my own sleep. And just becoming aware of all the negative effects of lack of sleep, it really changed my life. So I would recommend that. If it's about a podcast, like lately I'm like, oh my god, like I'm consuming everything from Naval Ravikant.
Right.
I'm not sure if I pronounce his name correctly, but that guy is fascinating. He can recommend books like this. Yeah. And he has like such a deep understanding of such a wide variety of topics. He's a super successful investor, entrepreneur, but he lives his life in a way that he invests in himself, he self-reflects, and just the connections that he sees is just resonates so much with me. So I love his stuff.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you for that. And very last question, which I'm going to be asking every single guest on my show is, we always think about the worst decision we made and we always regret those and we dwell on it. But this is a podcast about staying positive, moving forward, and inspiring people as well. So my question to you is, what is the best decision you've ever made in your life?
Phew. Yeah, I think that's a very difficult one. But so I have a very similar path to Victor's. So I think that was definitely a good decision when I decided to move abroad. But I also try to think of a different example that really helped me, that even though that we all are social animals and we need that kind of support network around us, but I think the best decision I made was that I decided not to wait for affirmation and not to wait for anybody else to start doing stuff. Because like it's great to go to the gym with somebody because you motivate each other, but then if somebody else has something, the other person has something else to do, you're not going to go. So I just do my own things, and I even do it without other people's support.
Yeah. That's something that I think is applicable across every aspect of life because you're so comfortable with doing everything yourself. You're so comfortable with, just being you and your confidence and that's going to help you with a lot of things. I feel, it helps you in relationships because you're more secure. It helps you at a workplace because you're more confident. It helps you with so much because you're so comfortable with yourself and doing things yourself, so that's a very, very good decision, I think. And I wasn't expecting that. It's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I really like. I started to think this way when I realized that there is one thing in life that I cannot escape.
Yeah.
It's myself. So I really need to get comfortable with myself, and I need to enjoy my own company. So I think it's important that people invest themselves and they spend time with themselves. And I think it was from Naval's podcast that lately people cannot even sit still for like 30 minutes just by themselves.
Yeah.
And I think if people start doing that, that can really have a positive impact on their lives.
Yeah, that's true. I'm just going to add a bit of a personal element here. So some people always ask me, oh, how did I get married so early at the age of 26? Or, sometimes my younger friends who are getting married, any advice? And I always tell them, the reason I got married so early was because I was really comfortable with myself. I just really was. I was so comfortable to the point that I was willing to have someone else in my life at that stage. If you're not comfortable with yourself, you cannot be making these big decisions. So the fact that you said that, I was just remembering this. I give a very similar advice to people when they enter relationships or when they want to move countries or they want to get married or whatever is that. And I say, if you're not comfortable with yourself, don't do it. It's just.
Absolutely. I think you're so right on that. I see it's a whole different topic, but I see so many people jump into relationships because they are trying to fill gaps in their own lives. I think it's very important that you get in relationships and you get married because you're just looking for an extension that can like really boost the quality of your life, but you're not trying to fill the gaps that you have. So first you need to be comfortable with yourself. Otherwise, you are going to be always looking for someone to fill those gaps that you may have.
Absolutely. So that's a really good decision you've made. And with that, I just want to say thank you. You're a true inspiration. And the fact that you learn to improve yourself after reading and you're constantly working on improving yourself shows your willingness and humility. And the fact that you don't have an ego and you just want to continuously improve and learn. This is why I call you an intrapreneur, and this is exactly why I have you on my podcast. It's our vision to inspire more people to become intrapreneurs so that they can work towards their goals and learn from the best. So thank you for your time, Adam. For those who want to connect with him, you may find his details in the description below. Remember, our next bonus episode, I will be summarizing some really easy methods by James Clear on how to build good habits and remove the bad ones. I'm also going to put cheat sheets in the description below, and all these cheat sheets were in the book and very easy to follow if you want to build habits or remove habits. He summarized them really well. And with that, we are done. So take care, everyone. And thank you again, Adam.
Thank you so much. If I may, I would like to add one more thing.
Sure.
Because I understand that it's difficult for everybody to change. One of the things that can really help you change is keeping yourself accountable. So if you would like to drive positive impact results in your life, you just tell people, I'm going to quit that. I'm going to quit this. And they are going to hold you accountable and you're more likely to succeed. So I know that I would regret not doing this right now. So I've been thinking about this for a very long time. Naina knows it. So I'm not 100% healthy person. I have a very bad habit, which I've been trying to give up for a long time. So this should be the proof that by the 6th of December, I'm not going to be smoking again. So whoever listens to this and you catch me doing something like that, hold me accountable.
Nice. So we've got quite a few downloads by now. Those of you who are listening, we've reached more than 220 or 230 downloads. So all you guys who are going to be downloading this one, you got to hold Adam accountable for this. I definitely will. And I do agree that that's one thing that helps, right? If all else fails or you just want to reach your goal quicker, get an accountability partner. And that really helps. And that's a wrap. Thank you. Thanks,
awesome.
listeners.
Thanks a lot,
and
Naina.
thank you,
it was
Adam.
great.